Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. They thought banning Earth would stop us. Now, we own the galaxy. Capital to the ground, the HFY War lasted 3 months. It wasn't a war, it was a purge. They had spent centuries manipulating the Council from the shadows, always avoiding direct conflict. They weren't ready for human brutality. When the smoke cleared, there was no HFY government left, just ruins. I had sent a message loud and clear: you don't get to make deals with me. You obey or you burn. The galaxy took notice. The rebellion stopped before they started. Even Earth went quiet. For the first time, the galaxy truly belonged to us. But there was still one last challenge, one last question that haunted me. I had spent my life fighting for humanity, for our survival, for our dominance. Now we had it, and I had to ask myself, what came next? Were we rulers, or were we conquerors doomed to keep fighting, keep expanding until we burned out like every empire before us? The answer wasn't clear, not yet. But one thing was, this was no longer just a human rebellion, this was the human empire. And I would do whatever it took to keep it. The human empire was secure, for now. The HFY were gone, the rebellions had been crushed, Earth had fallen in line, accepting that I was no mere warlord. They could either serve under me or be forgotten. The alien species that had once ruled the stars knew better than to challenge us, but I knew the truth. Peace was just a pause between wars, and the next war was already on the horizon. The warning came from an unlikely source, a distress beacon, old and barely functional, picked up in the void between systems. Normally, I wouldn't have cared: a lost ship, a dead colony, none of it mattered. But this was different. The beacon wasn't human, it was Council era. That was impossible. The Council had been wiped out, their fleets were dust, their leadership eradicated. Yet the transmission was clear: emergency broadcast, this is High Chancellor Vrex. The true Council survives. Humanity has doomed itself. You have no idea what's coming. Vrex, the same smug bastard who had ordered the ban on humanity, who had declared us unfit for the stars, the man who had looked down on us like insects. He should have been dead. I had personally watched his palace burn when we took Orion Prime. I had read the reports: his body found in the wreckage, his reign ended. But if this signal was real, if he was alive, that meant the war wasn't over. And it meant there was something out there worse than us. I took the fleet myself, no proxies, no scouting parties, no diplomats. If Vrex was alive, I was going to end him personally. The signal led us deep into uncharted space, beyond the outer rim, past any star system humanity had ever touched. And then we found it, a station floating in the abyss, old, ancient, far older than the Council itself. And it wasn't empty. The Council wasn't dead, not all of them. Vrex stood in the command hall of the station, surrounded by the remnants of his kind. Once, he had been regal, powerful. Now he was a shadow of himself, his ornate robes tattered, his face sunken, the arrogance in his eyes replaced by something else: fear. You should have killed me when you had the chance, he said, voice hoarse. I thought I did, I said, stepping forward. My soldiers surrounded the room, weapons ready. You've got one chance to explain why I shouldn't finish the job. He exhaled, looking past me, through me. You think you've won, he said. You think humanity has conquered the stars, but you don't understand what you've done. I narrowed my eyes. Enlighten me. His hands trembled, not with weakness, with dread. The Council wasn't just ruling the galaxy, he said. We were containing something. I felt my stomach tighten. Containing what? His gaze met mine. The ones who came before us. The station archives told the rest of the story. The Council hadn't been the first rulers of the galaxy, they had been the second. Long before them, before humans, before the Ardent, before any known species, there had been another civilization, one that had ruled everything, shaped everything. And then suddenly, they had vanished. Or so the Council had believed. The truth was worse, they hadn't vanished, they had been sealed away. The Council had spent centuries maintaining the old containment fields, ensuring that whatever had come before them stayed buried. The ban on humanity, the war against us, that had just been a distraction, an attempt to keep their focus on controlling us while they continued their real work in the dark. And then we destroyed them. We tore down the Council, burned their archives, shattered their defenses, and in doing so, we had unknowingly set the old ones free. Vrex looked at me with something close to pity. You don't know what you've done, he said. You think humanity is the ultimate predator. You have no idea what's coming. I considered his words. Then I pulled my gun and shot him in the head. Whatever nightmare was coming, I wasn't about to let the last of the old order lecture me on it. Humanity had survived everything thrown at us, the Council, the rebellions, our own traitors. And now we were about to face something worse. I holstered my weapon, turning to my officers. Prepare the fleet, I ordered. We've got a new war to win. Because it didn't matter what was coming, the old ones, the forgotten rulers, the monsters in the dark. They thought they could take the galaxy back. They were wrong. It belonged to us now, and nothing was going to take it away. The fleet was ready. We didn't wait, we didn't debate. There was no Senate meeting, no council of advisors wringing their hands over the implications of an ancient threat. Humanity had never been built for caution. We saw an enemy, and we prepared to kill it. The first sign of them came 2 weeks later. A Varan colony, once a thriving industrial hub, went dark. No distress signals, no debris fields, just silence. I sent a recon squad to investigate, veterans, hardened soldiers who had survived wars against both alien empires and our own kind. Only one of them came back, Private Kess. They found her drifting in a damaged escape pod, babbling incoherently. When the medics pulled her out, she was covered in blood that wasn't hers, eyes wide, breath ragged. She wouldn't stop whispering one phrase over and over, "They're not alive, they're not dead, they're just waiting." And then she started screaming. I reviewed the footage from her helmet cam. The colony was intact, too intact. Buildings stood untouched, undamaged. Lights flickered in the windows. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no weapons fired. Just emptiness. And then the footage changed. Kess and her squad had entered a processing facility. The power was still running, terminals blinked, conveyor belts hummed. And then something moved, not walked, not ran, moved. A shadow shifting unnaturally across the walls, something that shouldn't have been there. Then the screaming started. Kess ran, the others didn't. Her camera caught glimpses, shapes unraveling from the darkness, limbs that didn't belong, mouths that weren't mouths at all. And then static. Whatever had taken that colony, it wasn't something we had ever fought before. I convened the War Council. The colony is gone, I said, standing at the head of the war table. Not destroyed, not conquered, just taken. General Vasquez frowned. Taken by what? I tapped the screen, playing back the only clear frame we had managed to extract from the corrupted footage. It wasn't a creature, it wasn't a machine, it was wrong, a distortion of space, a thing that bent the light around it in ways that made no sense. Its shape wasn't fixed, one moment it was humanoid, the next it was a mass of shifting limbs, the next it was something else entirely. Admiral Kane, one of my oldest allies, exhaled sharply. We fought wars against every species in the galaxy, he said. But I don't think this is a species at all. What then? Vasquez asked. Kane looked at me. A plague. We moved fast. The colony was quarantined, no ships in, no ships out. We sent drones, hundreds of them, sweeping every inch of the surface. None of them lasted more than 5 minutes before their signals went dead. Then we tried bombardment, a full orbital strike. Fire and plasma rained from the sky, turning the entire city into a smoldering wasteland. For a moment, I thought it was enough, that we had burned whatever infection had taken root. Then the flames moved, not like a natural fire, not with wind or physics. The embers twisted, crawling across the ruins like living things. The ground cracked, shifting as if something was beneath it. And then, in the smoke, I saw them watching, the same shapes, the same impossible, shifting horrors. The bombardment hadn't destroyed them. It had woken them up. We pulled back, regrouped. My officers debated what to do next. Kane wanted to seal the system, let whatever was down there starve. Vasquez argued for a full-scale invasion, boots on the ground, overwhelming force. Lang, the politician from Earth, suggested we abandon the entire sector, leave it to rot. I listened. I weighed the options. And then I made my decision. We don't run, I said. We don't retreat. We don't fear the dark. I leaned forward, staring at the holographic display of the infected world. They thought banning humanity would stop us. They thought exiling us from the stars would keep us weak. I clenched my fist. They were wrong. I turned to my generals. We've beaten the council, we've beaten traitors, rebels, every damn thing that has tried to put humanity in a grave. I pointed to the screen. This is just another enemy. I straightened. Prepare the fleet. No more hesitation, no more theories. It was time to take the fight to them. As my fleet gathered, I stood alone in my war room, watching the stars. I wasn't a fool. This wasn't like any war we had fought before. This wasn't about territory or politics or power. This was survival. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if we were the hunters or the hunted. The fleet burned through the void, a storm of steel and fire. Thousands of warships, millions of soldiers, the greatest armada humanity had ever assembled, forged in blood, hardened by conquest. We had crushed empires, rewritten history, and claimed the stars as our own. Now we were marching into the unknown, straight into the maw of something we didn't understand, something ancient, something hungry, something that had been waiting. The closer we got to the infected world, the more the void felt wrong. Space wasn't supposed to feel like this. The black was supposed to be empty, endless, indifferent. But as we entered orbit, the darkness seemed to watch us. The scanners flickered, readings jumped erratically. Some ships reported movement outside their hulls, impossible things, shifting shapes in the void, no life signs, no heat signatures, just shadows that shouldn't be there. Then the whispers started. They crept through comms, faint at first, indistinct, a distortion, a trick of radio waves. But the longer we stayed, the clearer they became, voices speaking languages no one should know, calling us by name. The invasion began. Drop ships screamed through the atmosphere, cutting through thick, unnatural clouds. The city below had been reduced to a ruin of blackened steel and melted stone, a graveyard of a civilization that had never died properly. And in the streets, they waited, not the people who had once lived there, not even their corpses, just shapes, things that shouldn't exist, shifting in and out of focus, slipping between forms. Some looked vaguely humanoid, others like twisted mockeries of machines, of animals, of things no human mind could understand. We opened fire. The first wave of Marines hit the ground, rifles blazing. Plasma and bullets tore through the shifting things, ripping them apart. Some collapsed instantly, folding into nothing. Others twitched and changed, their bodies twisting as if learning from the wounds. Then they fought back. We lost the first regiment in minutes. The second lasted an hour. The enemy didn't fight like soldiers, didn't fight like anything. They moved wrong, not like they were running but like space itself was pulling them forward in unnatural jolts. They tore through our ranks with hands that became claws, then blades, then something worse. Soldiers who were barely touched began to change, their bodies warping, their voices turning into echoes of the whispers in our comms. I ordered the artillery strikes, orbital bombardment, tactical nukes. The ground cracked, fire consuming the city. For a moment, it seemed to work, the shadows twisted, writhing, retreating. Then the sky changed. The clouds churned, shifting from black to a deep, pulsing red. And something looked back at us, not a ship, not a fleet, a shape, a presence so massive it defied physics, stretching across the void, vast and shifting. No scans could define it, no sensor could measure it, but we all felt it, a weight in the mind, a pressure behind the eyes. Every soldier, every officer, every person in the fleet knew what it was without understanding how, the thing we had woken up, the thing the council had spent centuries trying to keep asleep. And then it spoke, not in words, not in sound, in thought, in hunger. And we understood, it wasn't fighting us, it was assimilating us, everything we were, everything we had built. It wasn't trying to win, it was trying to become us. For the first time in my life, I felt fear, not of death, not of pain, but of losing who we were. I had fought to carve humanity's name into the stars. I had burned entire worlds to make sure our species would never be erased, never be forgotten. And now we were facing something that wouldn't just kill us, it would consume us, make us part of itself, make our history, our struggles, our victories nothing more than echoes inside its mind. And I knew, deep down, that this was what had happened before. The civilization that came before the council, the ones who ruled the galaxy before anyone else, they hadn't vanished. They had become this. I made the call. All forces, retreat. Kane stared at me like I had lost my mind. We have the firepower to. We don't have anything against this, my voice was steel. Fall back now. The fleet disengaged. Fighters scrambled back to their carriers. Capital ships turned, engines burning hot. And that's when we learned the final truth. It didn't need to chase us. It was already inside us. The whispers didn't stop when we left orbit. They didn't stop when we reached deep space. They grew louder, familiar voices, my officers, my soldiers, my own voice. I gritted my teeth, feeling something cold crawl beneath my skin. We had survived wars, rebellions, betrayals. We had crushed the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. But this wasn't a war, it was a disease. And I had no idea if we had already been infected. Humanity had taken the galaxy. Now something else wanted to take us. And the only question left was, had it already won? We ran. For the first time since humanity took the stars, since we burned the old order to the ground, we ran. The fleet limped back to Orion Prime, battered but intact. But survival wasn't victory, I knew that now, because we hadn't escaped, not really. Whatever that thing was, whatever ancient horror we had unleashed, it hadn't needed to chase us. It had touched us, and that was enough. The first signs were small. Soldiers reported hearing voices in their sleep, whispering memories that weren't theirs, dreams of places that didn't exist. Engineers found ship systems malfunctioning, reactors humming in strange rhythms, data logs rewriting themselves with entries that no one had made. One of my officers, Lieutenant Briggs, collapsed in the war room mid-report. When he woke up, his eyes weren't his own. "They're already here," he said in a voice that wasn't his. Then he started screaming. "We quarantined the infected, contained the spread, or at least we tried. But how do you fight something that isn't alive, something that isn't an enemy in the way we understood?" I looked at my reflection one night, alone in my chamber, and for just a moment, my reflection moved differently than I did. That's when I knew, we weren't fighting an invasion. We were the invasion. Some called for extreme measures, burning entire fleets, purging colonies, erasing anything that had come in contact with the infection. Others whispered of surrender, not with words, not openly, but I could see it in them, a slow shift in their expressions, their mannerisms, their thoughts. The infection wasn't just spreading, it was learning, adapting, becoming us. And one day soon, we wouldn't even realize we had lost, because we would still call ourselves human, still think we were in control. But we wouldn't be us anymore. I made my final decision. There was no victory here, no battle to win, no war to fight, only one way to preserve humanity. The order was given. The core 4 human systems, Earth, Mars, Titan, Orion Prime, all were put into total lockdown. Every ship, every colony, every outpost that had come into contact with the infection was cut off, quarantined forever. It was the only way. The outer colonies, those that had never seen the infected worlds, never heard the whispers, would carry on. They would think us dead, lost to the void. And that was how it had to be. Humanity would survive, even if we didn't. I recorded my final message, knowing one day something might find it. This is High Commander Alexander Rains, last ruler of the human empire. If you are hearing this, then the infection has not reached you. Do not search for us. Do not try to reclaim what was lost. We were the rulers of the galaxy, now we are its warning. Run before you hear the whispers too. The transmission ended. I watched the fleet's engines burn as the last untainted ships left Orion Prime behind, vanishing into deep space, carrying what remained of humanity's future. I stayed behind. We all did, not out of fear, but because someone had to hold the line, even if it meant becoming part of the darkness, even if one day I would look in the mirror and see something staring back that wasn't me. The whispers grew louder. I closed my eyes and let the void take me. Humanity ruled the stars. Now we are the stars.